The hall burst into laughter. The moment my son said he'd finally gotten rid of my last name, the sound hit me like a blast of cold air, sharper than the chandelier light, bouncing off champagne glasses and polished marble. The ballroom at the Ashton Plaza Hotel looked like a painting, soft jazz humming in the corners, sequins and silk brushing past, waiters in white gloves floating between tables. I sat there in my modest gray suit, the same one I wore to Grace's college graduation, suddenly aware of how small and ordinary it looked. Against all that glitter. Matthew stood at the center with a microphone in hand. Tall, young, glowing in the confidence only a man on his wedding night can wear. His new wife, Olivia, draped in diamonds that looked borrowed from some movie wardrobe, rested her hand on his arm. He took a breath, theatrically, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "I couldn't wait to ditch that last name," he said, laughing. "It held me back my whole life." The crowd erupted. Champagne flutes clinked. Someone howled like they were at a comedy show instead of a wedding. Grace's hand slipped into mine under the table, a quiet squeeze. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. My eyes stayed on Matthew even as the ringing started in my ears. He wasn't done. New chapter. New identity, away from that small, ordinary family, he continued, raising his glass. "I'm free." That word, free, hung in the air, floating like smoke, stinging like it too. Olivia leaned toward her bridesmaids, voice low, but not low enough. "He's better now," she smirked. "He's not just some Carter anymore." Another wave of laughter. Photos snapped, flashes reflecting off Matthew's perfect smile. I sat perfectly still, wearing the practiced expression of a man who has spent his life not wanting to ruin other people's good time. My fork rested on untouched chicken. My heartbeat moved up into my ears until I could hear nothing else. Every detail in the room sharpened, the lemon scent of the table polish, the dull whir of the air vents, the way the saxophone player avoided looking in our direction. Matthew lifted his glass toward the audience, basking. People toasted him. Toasted the joke. My last name, the one my father gave me. The one I gave my children, burned in the air like an accusation. Thomas, my older brother, seated across the table, cleared his throat and stared at his plate. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. Just adjusted his tie like he wished he could adjust the moment itself. Grace whispered, barely audible, "Dad." "Just breathe, please." "I'm fine," I answered, though my voice came out thin. "You sure?" She asked again, already knowing I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Forcing a smile, the sort of smile you make when someone bumps into you in a grocery aisle. Polite, meaningless, automatic. The DJ started a soft track for the transition. Something meant to be sentimental. People wiped their eyes from laughter, not emotion. The MC took the microphone back and congratulated the newly minted Mr. and Mrs. Halle. Halle, I knew they'd taken that name months ago, but hearing it spoken publicly, replacing mine, made it concrete in a way paperwork never could. The rest of the room returned to chatter. But my body didn't follow. Grace touched my shoulder. "Dad, do you want—" I stood before she could finish. I walked slowly at first. Didn't want to draw attention. Didn't want to make a scene. The tables blurred into one another, linen, glass, sequins, floral arrangements, the smell of roses and perfume too sweet to breathe under. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. Even that hurt. The hallway outside the ballroom was dimmer, calmer. Only one distant staff member wheeled a cart of empty dishes toward the service elevator. The music was muffled behind the doors. I found a railing along the wall, brass, cold, and gripped it as though the floor might drop without warning. For a moment, I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. Then the words slipped out, not loud, not dramatic, not angry, just small and raw. "My son hates the name I worked my life to give him." The carpet below blurred. I kept my voice to a whisper, like confession was safer quiet. I thought he was proud. The hallway swallowed the sound, and for the first time that night, I was grateful for silence. I used to tell myself that every sacrifice had a purpose. That missing dinners, birthdays, and anniversaries wasn't abandonment, it was investment. An investment in a future where my children would never feel the gnawing shame I grew up with. I was born with nothing. Father gone before I could form the question why, and my mother working 2 cleaning jobs just to cover rent in a 1-bedroom apartment that always smelled faintly of bleach and canned vegetables. I learned early that dignity wasn't handed out, you bought it with exhaustion. So, when I turned 18, I swore I would build something with my name on it. Something no one could laugh at. That vow became Carter and Sons Construction, even before I had sons to justify the name. The first projects were tiny, patching drywall in diners, repairing roofs after storms. By the time I hit 35, I was bidding on commercial contracts. Hospitals, schools, retail developments. The company grew faster than my sleep schedule. I wore the same boots for years, and the paint never really left my cuticles. But every time I deposited another check, I imagined a future where my children, someday, would never have to live like I did when Michael Turner came on as my business partner. We shook hands in a parking lot and never broke that trust once. You work harder than anyone I know, he told me more than once. But one day it'll cost you if you're not careful. I brushed it off. Back then I was younger, hungrier, convinced I could outrun the consequences of imbalance. Sarah, God. Sarah, she met me before I owned anything except ambition. She used to say she fell in love with the way I believed in tomorrow. She deserved the world, and I kept trying to build it for her, brick by brick. She would pack lunches for me at 4 a.m. and paste drawings from the kids to the inside of my truck so I'd take them to work with me. Even now, sometimes I catch the smell of honey and lavender and swear she's still close enough to reach. We had 2 children, Grace first, quiet, thoughtful, always humming. Then Matthew, loud, fearless, creative, determined to be bigger than any room he walked into. I loved them both more than breath. But the sad truth is that the world knew me more than they did. I was the man who built half the strip malls in the county. The man whose company trucks were seen everywhere. But to my kids, I was the man who kissed their heads in the morning and came home after they fell asleep. There were years, too many, when I thought that was okay. I was providing. I was protecting them. It didn't matter if I wasn't there because one day I told myself they'd understand. Then Sarah collapsed in the kitchen. Just a regular Tuesday, tea steeping, laundry half-folded, and a sudden heart attack ended everything warm in the house. She was 48. I remember standing outside the hospital afterwards, holding her wedding ring in my palm and thinking, if I had worked less, would it have been different? It was a question I never answered, but it followed me like a shadow. After that, home felt like a place I passed through rather than lived inside. I poured myself into work not because I wanted to, but because stopping meant feeling. And feeling was unbearable. Richard Barnes, my lawyer and closest friend, checked on me constantly. You don't have to be steel all the time, he told me once over late-night scotch. You're allowed to grieve. I don't have time to, I answered. His reply was quiet. Your kids need a father more than the company needs a CEO. I should have listened. Maybe everything that came later would have been different. As the business expanded, I put Matthew's name beside mine on the paperwork for the new division, Carter and Sons Commercial Contracting. I thought it would make him proud. I thought inheriting what I built would mean something to him. When he came back from college full of new ideas and bigger dreams, I imagined we'd be partners someday. I imagined passing him everything, the trucks, the crews, the bids, the legacy, but what I saw as a gift, he saw as a cage. The first signs were subtle, jokes about manual labor, comments about wanting a more glamorous life. He asked once if he had to have Carter on his business cards when he did side consulting. I laughed it off. Thought he was being playful. Then the wedding planning started. Olivia wanted the kind of event that belonged in celebrity magazines, designer decor, ice sculptures, an 11-piece live band, an open bar stocked with liquor I couldn't pronounce. When Matthew told me the venue cost more than a mid-level renovation project, I took a breath and asked if we could scale some things back. He didn't hesitate. Dad, you can afford it. I stared at him. I'm not just a checkbook, Matt. He rolled his eyes. I'm not asking for a handout. I'm asking for support for the biggest day of my life. I caved eventually. Not because I wanted to, but because I never wanted him to feel, even for a minute, that I didn't believe in him. I covered almost half the cost. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want thanks. I just wanted him to know he mattered. Days before the wedding, I sat alone in my home office, old blueprints pinned to the walls, a plaque that read Carter and Sons, built on honor above my desk, flipping through photo albums, vacations I missed, Grace's high school play I called in to say I'd be late to, then never made, Matthew's soccer finals, everyone watched through a phone recording after the fact, downstairs. Grace played piano, something slow, flowing, warm, the kind of song that fills a house with life. I listened but didn't join her. I stayed upstairs, staring at the photos like I could rewrite them by remembering hard enough. I whispered into the quiet room. I did my best. But sometimes the world doesn't reward your best. It punishes imperfection. The night before the wedding, Matthew came by. He smelled like cologne and adrenaline, the swagger of a groom at the peak of youth. You seem tired, he said. Long week, I answered. He walked around the office, looking at old blueprints and framed project photos without much interest. You know, he said, Olivia thinks I should use the Halle name professionally. It sounds more modern. I swallowed. It's your decision. He nodded. Good, I want to be more than where I came from. I forced a smile. I always wanted you to be more. He grinned, clapped my shoulder, and left like the conversation had been light. But after the door closed, I sat staring at the family photo on my desk, the last one before Sarah died. The kids were smiling. I was holding Grace on my hip. Matthew had his arms around my neck. I looked younger, stronger, certain. And for the first time, I wondered if the legacy I'd built wasn't a ladder, but a wall. The week leading up to the wedding felt like moving through a storm, pretending it was sunshine. I smiled when expected, nodded at small talk, took photos I never wanted to remember. Everyone else was floating, champagne, silk dresses, glittering suits, while something inside me sank inch by inch. The rehearsal dinner was held at a private lakeside club, the kind of place where napkins are ironed and even. The water pitchers seemed too elegant to touch. The lights were warm and golden, the decor deliberately rustic in a way that only expensive places could pull off. Camera flashes struck constantly, capturing curated memories. Not real ones. Olivia's father, Leonard Halle, shook my hand with a grip that was all performance. Patrick, he said, voice polished with old money. Heard you're in construction? Commercial contracting, I corrected politely. Started with residential, expanded over time. He chuckled, not kindly. Working with your hands is honest work. Shame it doesn't pay respect the way a real profession does. A couple of guests laughed like he'd just told a clever joke. I smiled, tight, restrained. Work is work. I'm proud of what I built. Leonard raised his glass. Of course you are. For a blue-collar fellow, you've done quite well. Matthew was standing right beside him. He could have said anything, even just come on, Dad built a great company. But instead he grinned at Leonard's joke and tapped his glass to Olivia's. He really has hustled, hasn't he? Laughter again, flashes, clinking glasses. Grace stared at her plate, jaw clenched. Later, I saw her pull Matthew aside near the patio lights, soft yellow bulbs draped like a scene from a catalog. Their voices weren't loud, but there was a sharpness to the gestures. You're humiliating him, Grace whispered. He's fine, Matthew huffed. No. He's pretending to be fine. Matthew scoffed. Dad built a name that doesn't mean anything. I'm upgrading. You should be happy for me. I froze just inside the doorway. I wasn't meant to hear that. Neither of them knew I was there. Grace snapped. Upgrading. The Carter name got you through school. It paid for everything you have? Matthew's eyes narrowed. Yeah, well, it won't get Olivia into elite corporate circles. She's applying to firms that care about perception. Carter ruins our brand. Grace was speechless. I was too. The last thing I wanted was to eavesdrop on my own children, but my feet simply wouldn't move. A strange coldness crept up my spine. They didn't notice me, and I slipped away before they could. Back inside, I buttered a dinner roll with trembling fingers. People chatted around me with fake warmth, compliments layered over condescension. I caught snippets, surprised they could afford this venue. He must have stretched himself thin. I heard he still works in the field. None of them knew that the venue was partly paid on my credit, the credit card Matthew had used without even mentioning it. I discovered it when the server brought the bill for the rehearsal dinner. The coordinator cheerfully said, "Don't worry, Mr. Carter. Matthew already put it on your Amex." I blinked. "I didn't authorize that." She tilted her head, confused, already walking away to tend to the next thing. I sat there staring at the receipt like it was a foreign language. Michael Turner stopped by the table then. "You look like hell, Pat." I tried to chuckle. "Long week." His eyes studied mine the way only someone who's known you for decades can. "You want me to run interference? Pull you out early?" "No," I whispered. "I promised Matthew this week would be smooth." "I'm keeping that promise." He didn't argue, but he didn't like it. When Olivia took the mic to give last-minute wedding announcements, her voice had the cheerfulness of a talk show host. Also, small update for tomorrow. We had planned to let Patrick give a little speech, but we realized it doesn't quite fit the aesthetic. The room laughed politely. She waved a hand. "Nothing personal. It's just tomorrow is about vibe, not randomness. We really want cohesion." I sat still. Not a muscle on my face moved. Someone patted my back lightly. "I'm sure you understand." I did, perhaps too well. Later, when most people were dancing or mingling, Matthew approached me. "Dad, about the speech." I raised my hand gently. "It's your day, Matthew. You call the shots." He seemed relieved. Relieved that I wasn't hurt. Relieved that he didn't have to face what he'd done. He clapped my shoulder. "Thanks for getting it. You're a good sport?" "A good sport." Like I'd lost a game and was pretending not to mind. Before I could answer, someone shouted, "Matt, check your phone." Everyone swarmed around him, bridesmaids, groomsmen, guests. I watched from a distance, though I could see the glow of the screen reflected in his smile. Then I heard it. He did it. "Guess it's official now." That's the best thing you could have done. Phones came out, tapping, scrolling, laughing emojis floating in the air like confetti. I didn't need to walk closer. I knew. I could feel it before I saw it. Grace was the one who approached me, trembling. "Dad, please don't look yet." But I did. On one of the guests' phones, the post was open. "Matthew Halle, the next chapter begins." "Goodbye, Carter. Hello, success. Dozens of comments. Upgrade." About time. Halle sounds way more executive. My son, my flesh and blood, had legally changed his surname before the ceremony, and announced it like a triumph. He stood in the middle of the circle, laughing, receiving back slaps and congratulations, the same look on his face he used to wear when he scored a winning goal at 10 years old. Only now, the achievement was shedding the name I gave him. I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't crack. I just went quiet. Grace sat next to me. "Dad, say something, please." I smiled softly. "I'm okay. You're not. I will be." She placed her head on my shoulder, and for a moment I was grateful that someone still instinctively saw me as worth comforting. Meanwhile, on the dance floor, Olivia spun like the center of fireworks, glittering in a dress meant to shine. Matthew raised his phone high, laughing again as new likes came in. Someone yelled, "Take a bow for the Halle legacy." He did. No hesitation. No guilt. Pure pride. I watched him. That same child who used to beg me to lift him onto my shoulders. The same child who cried into my work vest when he scraped his knee. The same child who looked out the truck window and asked if everything we drove past would someday belong to us. And I wondered, where did he go? Or had I simply never known him at all? When I finally stood to leave, no one noticed. I didn't expect them to. My steps were slow, careful, like I was afraid the floor might shatter under my weight. The camera flashes continued behind me, lighting up people who were celebrating a victory I didn't understand. The night air outside the venue was cool, quiet, merciful. I loosened my tie and stared across the lake where the club lights rippled in the water. I should have been angry, furious. But the dominant emotion was something softer, duller. Lost. It wasn't just a name being discarded. It was decades of sacrifice. It was every paycheck handed over to tuition, every night spent awake, every dream I postponed so theirs could flourish. Matthew hadn't just abandoned a word. Carter. He had abandoned the meaning behind it. The sweat, the love, the heritage, the intention. I sat on a bench near the water, one hand covering my mouth, and whispered, not dramatic, not loud, how did I fail him this badly? There was no answer. There was only the wind, the faraway music, and the hollow space where pride used to live. After the ceremony, while guests shifted into the ballroom for the reception, I slipped away to the lounge just off the main hallway. A room with leather chairs and faded portraits of men who'd built fortunes and smiled like they never lost. Sleep over anything. I just needed air, space, quiet. I sank onto a sofa near a window, loosened my tie, and stared at a champagne stain on the carpet that looked like a small country no one cared about. My chest felt tight, as if grief had hands and was pressing down, daring me to break. Soft footsteps approached. I thought maybe Grace had followed me. But I heard Olivia's voice, the practiced sweetness stripped away when she didn't realize anyone else was there. We need to speed this up, she whispered sharply. Her maid of honor, Danielle, answered. He'll get his share soon enough. Olivia huffed. Matthew only sticks with his dad because he wants control of the company shares. Once the transfer is through, he'll cut ties, won't need the old man anymore. I froze. My heart didn't pound. It didn't race. It stalled, like it was deciding whether it was worth continuing. Danielle sounded more cautious. And you're sure Patrick doesn't suspect anything? I mean, this is his company. Olivia scoffed. He's clueless. Matthew said he's old school, signs things without reading. A little smirk in her voice. Once the sale is finalized next quarter, we'll finally have real capital. And no more small-town Carter reputation. They moved away, voices drifting into giggles about honeymoon plans. The last thing I heard was, he's useful for now, but only until Matthew's name is big enough. My palms went cold. Sweat gathered under my collar. For a moment, the room tilted like a ship leaning too far. I remained perfectly still, silent, invisible, when I was certain they were gone. I exhaled shakily and pulled out my phone. Notifications lit the screen, messages, tags, congratulatory posts, and then one email stood out. Richard Barnes. Urgent ownership transfer request approval. Timestamp. 2:18 p.m. Right before the ceremony. My fingers hesitated. Trembling slightly as I tapped it open. Patrick. We received a signed corporate transfer request this morning. Time-stamped under your digital authorization. The changes are substantial. Are you sure you approve this? It goes into effect Monday if not revoked. Call me as soon as possible. Attached was a PDF several. Actually, opened the largest document. The first page punched me straight in the chest. Carter and Sons corporate structure realignment effective. Monday. 9 o'clock. Eamon Matthew Halle, sole heir and primary beneficiary of corporate sale funds. Olivia Halle, Chief Financial Officer. 35% controlling authority over assets. Patrick Carter, an active minority consultant. Non-decision role company name change review. Pending estimated net distribution upon sale. $14.7 million. The words didn't blur. They sharpened. Razor dash like. Every line confirmed the truth behind Olivia's whispered cruelty. I was not being honored. I was being erased. My thumb scrolled to the signature block. My own digital signature sat there, locked in place, but the date was wrong. So was the time? I hadn't signed anything today. Someone had used the uploaded signature. Files stored in the legal folder, the ones I used once to sign remote authorizations years ago. Someone with full administrative access. Matthew. A soft buzzing filled my ears. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. A single, unwavering note of realization. Their entire future, this extravagant venue. The brand, the name change, Wasn't just ambition. It was conquest. My conquest. My life's work. Grace texted right then. Dad? They're starting the reception entrance. Soon? Are you okay? I typed, yes, just breathing. Then I locked the phone and stared out the window. The lake outside reflected fireworks from the pre-reception. Festivities, bright, loud, temporary explosions of joy. Behind them, the dark water remained unchanged, steady, watching. My breathing slowed. Pain moved aside, and clarity stepped in. I stood, smoothing my suit jacket, and walked to the business center at the far end of the hallway, an unused room stacked with a printer, a few spare laptops, and a lamp left on for show. The carpet muffled my footsteps. The silence felt like an ally. I tapped into my secure email, downloaded every file, and printed them, page after page. The machine hummed. Warm paper sliding into the tray in neat stacks. Proof. Truth. The kind that could burn down facades. One document showed a clause I'd never seen upon incapacitation or withdrawal of Patrick Carter. Full ownership reverts to Matthew Halle without contest. Another. Inquiry submission for corporate valuation pending review by Halle & Co. advisors. They were preparing to sell. Sell everything. Strip my name from the company. Rewrite history. And leave me as some consultant, a relic. I gathered the documents into a crisp stack and laid my hand on top of them. My fingers no longer trembled. My heartbeat was steady, almost eerily quiet. I heard footsteps again. A knock, Richard's voice, muffled through the door. Pat, you in there? I opened the door, holding the papers carefully. He saw my face. His shoulders dropped. You saw it? I did. Richard stepped inside, closing the door behind him. We can stop this. That signature was unauthorized. We just need a direct revocation. I nodded. Monday morning? No, he said firmly. Tomorrow. First thing. Before the banks open. Before any board acknowledgement. We shut this down completely. I breathed in slowly. Thank you. He studied me. Do you want to confront him tonight? I looked toward the celebration beyond the walls, the cheering, the clinking glasses, Olivia's laugh echoing faintly, Matthew's pride inflating like a balloon that believed it would never pop. No, I said. Tonight is his illusion. I won't take that away. Richard nodded with a mix of admiration and sorrow. You're a better man than they deserve. Maybe, I said quietly. Or maybe I'm just finally learning how to protect what matters. I placed the documents into a weathered folder someone had left in a drawer. Small, unassuming, but enough. Every page in it was a map to the truth. And for the first time since this nightmare began. My spine straightened. The Carter name wasn't weak. It wasn't outdated. It wasn't something to discard. It was something to defend. I buttoned my jacket, slipped the folder under my arm, and walked toward the noise and lights of the reception, this time. Not as a father desperate for approval, but as a man preparing for justice. The next morning, the wedding brunch looked like something from a magazine, sunlight pouring through tall arched windows, clinking forks and crystal mimosa glasses, the soft fizz of champagne, guests in pastel outfits murmuring with gentle hangover laughter. A live quartet played something light and cheerful. It was the kind of atmosphere meant to be untouchable by anything real. Matthew and Olivia sat at the front table beneath a floral arch, both glowing with self-satisfaction, as if the world were already applauding their new legacy. Olivia leaned into him, whispering jokes that made their friends laugh on cue. Matthew kept checking his phone, no doubt enjoying the social media attention from the night before. I sat among the guests, silent, breathing steadily. The brown leather folder rested on the floor beside my chair, its contents heavier than steel. Halfway through the meal, the event coordinator tapped the microphone. It's time for remarks from the father of the groom. There were small claps, polite, oblivious. Matthew gave me a confident nod. Olivia smirked as if she'd already scripted the speech she expected me to give. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, and walked toward the microphone. My steps echoed more loudly than they should have. The quartet stopped playing. All eyes turned. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't smile. I simply began. When I was a younger man, I said, I worked with my hands. I didn't have much, but I had a name, Carter, and I promised myself it would eventually stand for something. The room stilled. I built that name through early mornings and late nights. Missed birthdays. Missed anniversaries. Missed pieces of life I will never get back. Not because I wanted money, but because I never wanted my children to feel poor, to feel lesser, to bow their heads the way I once did. A hush swept across the tables. Someone set down a glass too hard. The clink rang out. I looked at Matthew. I believe the Carter name stood for honor. Not wealth. Not status, honor. Matthew shifted in his seat. Olivia pressed her lips together. I nodded softly as if speaking to myself. And yesterday, I learned what my last name means to you. A ripple. A sinking feeling. Someone whispered, "Oh no." Olivia frowned. Matthew forced a smile. Dad, maybe, but I continued, voice gentle, measured. The ballroom microphones picked up every speech, every aside, every joke, including yours. I took out my phone, held it near the speaker, and pressed play. Matthew's voice filled the hall, loud, undeniable. I always hated that last name. Gasps exploded. Chairs creaked. A woman at a nearby table covered her mouth. Matthew shot up from his seat. Dad, that was taken out of context. I raised a hand, quietly, calmly. He froze. My voice stayed steady. That wasn't all I learned yesterday. I picked up the brown folder from beside the podium and placed the documents on the table next to the microphone. I learned that the company I built, the company I put your name on, because I thought it would make you proud, was something you planned to take from me, not inherit, Caesar. The crowd murmured, frantic, disbelieving. I tapped the first page. Corporate takeover request? Signed using my stored signature file. Without my knowledge. I tapped the second. Application to sell the company immediately after transfer. I tapped the third. Projected distribution of $14.7 million, all funneled directly to Matthew and Olivia Halle. Olivia stood instantly. That's a lie. This is completely, you're humiliating us. I looked at her, not angry, not hateful, just tired. Humiliation only exists when something untrue is exposed. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Matthew tried to find his footing. Dad, I was going to talk to you about that. It was just planning ahead. You've worked so hard, and I wanted to take responsibility off your shoulders. Some people nodded, desperate to believe him. I spoke softly. And yet, the documents list me as inactive minority consultant, a man who would have no control. No authority. No voice. Matthew's face flushed red. He looked around wildly, at the crowd, at Olivia, at me, searching for a version of the truth that would save him, before he could speak again. The hall doors opened. Richard Barnes stepped in. A wave of whispers washed through the room. Richard walked calmly toward the front, stopped beside me, and addressed the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, for clarity, the ownership transfer referenced here cannot and will not take effect. It has already been legally voided. Murmurs rose, confusion then curiosity. Matthew's voice cracked. Void? Why would it be void? I had full. Richard cut him off. Because as of last month, Patrick Carter does not own Carter & Sons, not one share. The company was sold in full 32 days ago. Matthew stared at him, mouth open, disbelief choking him. You, what? No, that's impossible. Olivia shook her head violently. This is illegal. You can't sell a company without telling us. I lifted the final document, the sale confirmation, and laid it on the podium. My signature on this one. I said quietly, is real? People leaned closer, trying to see. Matthew's voice strained, desperate. Why would you sell it? It's everything. It's our future. I looked at him, not with anger, with the simplest truth. It was my life, not yours to exploit. Olivia slammed her hand on the table. Then where's the money? Where are the proceeds? If this is some kind of power play, I shook my head. No power play. Then, for the first time, my voice hardened. The proceeds went to the Grace Carter Foundation Scholarship Fund for underprivileged children entering trade fields. Sarah wanted that, and I wanted to honor her. Gasps, silence. A few guests instinctively looked at Grace. She sat already crying quietly, trying to hide it. Matthew blinked like he'd been slapped. So I get nothing? I held his gaze. You wanted freedom from my name. Now you truly have it. Olivia nearly screamed, pointing at me. You ruined us. Do you understand that? You ruined our future. Richard stepped forward slightly, protective. But I didn't need protection. I looked at her the way one looks at a stranger. If your future depended on stealing from me, it was never a future worth having. Matthew stumbled closer to the podium, words tumbling. Dad, please. You misunderstood. I waited. I wanted to hear him say it. He couldn't. His mouth opened and closed like a man watching opportunity collapse in slow motion. His eyes filled, not with regret, but with panic. Fear of loss. Fear of starting from zero. Not fear of losing me. Olivia grabbed his arm frantically. Matthew, we can fix this. Just say something. He couldn't. I lifted the microphone one last time. Voice barely above a whisper, the softest tone of the entire morning. I gave everything so my children would never feel small. I didn't realize one of them would try to make me feel small instead. Someone sobbed. Someone else whispered a prayer. But overall stillness, like the air itself was holding its breath. I placed the microphone back into its stand. No dramatic drop. No raised voice. Dignity only. Then I turned away from the podium and walked toward the exit, each footstep echoing louder than applause ever could. No one stopped me. Even Olivia's shouting faded behind me. Even Matthew's fractured pleas dissolved. I reached the doors, placed my hand on the brass handle, and paused, not to look back, but to breathe in the last moment of a past that was finally done. Then I stepped through. The hall fell into absolute silence as the doors closed behind me. The fallout didn't come all at once. It arrived in waves, soft at first, then relentless. In the weeks after the wedding, videos of the confrontation leaked online. Not from me. Not from anyone I knew. Just guests with phones eager to turn real life into entertainment. Short clips circulated, my speech, Olivia shouting, Matthew stumbling over excuses. Without context, the world filled in its own. Olivia's job prospects dimmed almost immediately. Firms that once courted her stopped replying. A corporate recruiter she bragged about for months sent a short email that was quietly forwarded to Grace. Given recent publicity and professional concerns regarding discretion, we are withdrawing consideration. Olivia blamed everyone except herself. People love drama, she snapped in a voicemail to Matthew that Grace later told me about. That stupid video cost me my future. She never mentioned the documents. Never mentioned the takeover. Only the embarrassment. Matthew tried to hide his fear longer. He applied to consulting firms, tech startups, marketing agencies. Anywhere prestige matched the image he wanted. A month later, he called me. The conversation lasted 46 seconds. Dad, do you think you could write a letter for me? For employers? Just something saying I was going to take over the company? I answered gently. Matthew, that wouldn't be honest. He breathed hard into the phone. You don't get it. No one wants me without that title. I didn't say what echoed in my chest. You didn't want me without that title. I wished I could fix him. I wished I could salvage him. But some lessons can't be handed. They have to be faced. After that, he stopped calling. Grace checked in constantly. She never gloated, never once said I told you so, though she had every right. Instead, she asked if I was eating, resting, taking time off work, until she remembered there was no work anymore. You could build another company, she said once. I could, I replied, but you won't. I gave a small smile. No, I think I've already built enough for one lifetime. She hugged me longer than she needed to. It felt like forgiveness I didn't deserve. Richard helped me finish the scholarship fund paperwork, polished every clause, protected every distribution. He was meticulous, professional, and still somehow compassionate. "You'll change lives with this," he told me. "I hope so." He lowered his voice. "And Matthew, he may find his way someday. But you saved him from becoming someone who never had to." I didn't respond, because I didn't know whether saving him was what I had done. Not long after, I moved to the lakeside cabin Sarah and I once visited on short vacations. Back then we promised we'd retire there someday, drink tea in the mornings, feed ducks off the deck, play cards in the evenings. Life had laughed at those plans, then swallowed them. Still, the cabin felt like a place where ghosts weren't hostile, just reminders. The first night there, rain tapped the roof in slow rhythms, gentle rather than corrective. The lake was dark glass under the storm clouds, and pine trees swayed like they were whispering to one another. I sat in the living room with a wool blanket around my shoulders and a cup of tea warming my hands. On the table in front of me sat a single photo frame, Matthew at 5 years old, holding a toy hammer and grinning up at me like I hung the moon. He'd once wanted to be just like me. That version of him, the one with scraped knees and sticky hands and endless curiosity, I would have given my soul for. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not with rage, not with resentment, just with a tired kind of love. A love that didn't know where to go anymore. I did try. I whispered. The rain answered with steady taps against the windows. Slowly, I turned the frame face down. Not dramatically. Not angrily, just because it hurt too much to look. Afterward, I sat back, inhaling the smell of pine, cedar, and chamomile tea. The fire crackled softly. My hand steadied. Grace visited every weekend. Sometimes she talked, sometimes she played piano on the old keyboard we kept there. Sometimes we just watched the water in silence. She never pushed me to heal faster than I could. "Do you hate him?" she asked one night. I took my time before answering. "No, I hate the choices he made. But not him." She nodded like she had been waiting for that honesty, and maybe hoping for it. The world outside continued spinning, new jobs, new scandals, new headlines. Life moved on and didn't care who fell behind. I learned to move slowly. I learned to breathe without urgency, to live without a title, without a company, without a mission to shield me from my own emotions. One evening, Grace and I sat on the cabin deck watching sunset bleed orange into the lake. She asked, "Do you ever regret selling the company?" I thought about the answer, not the surface answer, but the deeper one. "No," I said finally. "I regret the years I worked so hard that I missed the people I was working for. But selling the company was the first time I chose peace." Grace slid her arm through mine and held it there. "Mom would be proud." I didn't respond right away. I looked at the horizon, the glow fading gently, the water turning still. "I hope so," I finally whispered. There were consequences. There was loss. There was quiet. But for the first time in decades, the quiet didn't feel like failure. It felt like rest. 6 months passed the way seasons do, subtly at first, then suddenly all at once. Winter softened into spring, and the world around me thawed in places I didn't realize had been frozen. The scholarship program took on a life of its own. What began as documents in a folder turned into real faces, real dreams, young adults in worn work boots, calloused hands, and hopeful eyes. Dozens of students entering trade schools, welding programs, carpentry academies, HVAC certification courses. Every month I received letters written in shaky penmanship. "Thank you for believing in people like me. I didn't think college was for someone like us. I want to build something that matters." There was something healing, almost circular, about it. I had built a company. Now the company was building futures. And none of it required my name to shine. I settled into a rhythm at the lakeside cabin. Mornings in the garden, pulling weeds, turning soil, planting tomatoes and herbs the way Sarah used to. Afternoons with old jazz spinning on the record player, the scratchy vinyl version she always swore sounded warmer. Some days I walked along the lake, quiet except for the sound of ducks cutting through the water. I didn't chase purpose. I let purpose come to me when it wanted. Then, one quiet Saturday, Matthew's car rolled up the gravel drive. I saw him through the window before he saw me. shoulders slumped, hair unstyled. A man who finally understood consequences the world would not shield him from. He stood there at the bottom of the porch steps. Unable to move forward or walk away, I opened the door. He looked up, eyes red but dry, like he had run out of tears before he got here. "Dad," he whispered. I didn't say his name back. I didn't need to. He climbed the steps slowly and stopped a few feet away, close enough to speak, far enough to show respect. "I'm sorry," he said, voice shaking. "Not because of the company or the money. I'm sorry for making you feel small, for treating your love like something owed." Silence stretched between us, not hostile, just fragile. He continued, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just had to say the words." I breathed in pine, damp soil, lake air. "Thank you for saying them." He swallowed hard. "Olivia and we separated. I kept thinking if I could fix everything she wanted, I'd feel whole. But the more I tried to impress her, the more I hated myself. I didn't see it until there was nothing left." He wiped his face quickly, embarrassed. "I know I don't deserve anything from you." "You deserve a chance to be better," I said softly. He looked up, startled. "Does that mean we're okay?" I shook my head gently. "We're not there yet. But the door isn't closed." His shoulders sagged in relief, not joy, just release. He nodded slowly, accepting limits for the first time in his life. "I'll keep trying," he whispered. "I hope you do," I answered. He didn't ask to come inside. He didn't ask for money or help or shortcuts. When he walked back to his car, he paused, looked at me like a boy again, and said, "Thank you for not hating me." I didn't answer until he sat down behind the wheel. "I never stopped loving you," I said. He heard it. I could see it in the way his head fell into his hands. Then he drove away, gravel crunching under tires, leaving space but not absence. Later that afternoon I returned to the garden. Dirt under my fingernails, jazz floating through the open windows, warmth settling in my shoulders. I wasn't healed completely. Matthew wasn't redeemed completely. Life doesn't tie itself into bows for the sake of comfort, but the doorway was open. That was enough. I looked out at the lake, the sun melting into the water, and thought about legacy, how I once believed it was the company, the name, the empire. But empire means nothing if character collapses. And blood means nothing if respect is absent. Fatherhood does not guarantee admiration. Parenting is not a transaction. Love does not promise loyalty, only opportunity, dignity, I learned. Builds a foundation no one can steal, not even the people we raise. The wind rustled the garden, the lake shimmered, and I whispered the truth I didn't need applause for. Justice doesn't always need witnesses. Sometimes silence is the loudest sound.